Welcome to Franchise Sales Methodology for Partners. The session is tailored to our partners and is based on SAP's globally adopted sales methodology. This provides a set of tools for partner sales executives to use as a guide for selling SAP software, and it mirrors and coordinates sales efforts between partners and SAP sales teams to ensure alignment and clarity at any stage in a sales cycle. Here's today's agenda. By the end of this session, you should come away with three things. 1, what is FSM and why is it important? Number 2, a look at the sales process overview, the breakout of sales phases, and the required proof points, as well as criteria for deal qualification. Number 3, additional resources and where to get access to more information. Why FSM? In a rear view look at the business, we see three concerning trends. 1, currently there's a trend of low deal conversion, and this is even more evident in the cloud business. 2, over 60% of deals have ended up slipped or discontinued. And 3, we see a large number of deals with no change or movement in more than 90 days. These stalled deals are less likely to close the longer they're stalled. We all have a finite amount of resources to assign to deals, and these stalled, lost, and discontinued deals all translates to a high cost of sale. So FSM aims to take that guesswork out of the selling process so we win more and we win more predictably. At minimum, know when to walk away from deals that we don't have a good probability of closing. This is simple math. If you have 10% chance of closing a deal, you need 10 times that pipeline to achieve your target. But if we could just increase that win rate to 20%, you spend less time hunting and hoping and more time closing. The how. FSM helps sales align the right resources to the right deals where we have the best chance of winning. Customers are predictable. It doesn't seem so when each sale is described as a snowflake with no two alike, but the customer behavior itself is predictable. So if we can systematically approach each stage, we are more likely to see a predictable outcome. FSM also helps you know where you are in the sales cycle at any one time. Therefore, you know what needs to happen to move the sales cycle along or unstall a deal. It provides clear entry and exit points at every milestone and what it'll take for your customer to agree to the next phase. You won't have to wonder why a customer has gone quiet. What, or more importantly, what is it not? This is not intended to replace your own methodologies. Some partners have their own sales methodologies and processes, and this is in no way a requirement to follow FSM. It is, however, important and critical that all sales methodology has basic agreed upon checkpoints for validation. What it is. It's an effective sales execution process. It's a compilation of best-in-class methodologies that SAP has been using and leveraging for years, including customer-centric selling, design thinking, basho, spin selling, and many others. And we're making this available to the benefit of our partners. Let's take a closer look. This is a sales process overview with defined phases and stages that reflect the customer's buying journey. To provide some insight, SAP phases from recognize to purchase are identified and documented in CRM internally as phases F through A. So when you hear SAP sales refer to a B-stage deal, you'll know that we're in negotiations. This one-pager clearly identifies entry criteria, key milestones, and the exit milestone, as well as the proof points, which we'll spend more time on in the next slide. But most helpful, I think, is the list of key activities or deliverables that happen in each phase to ensure we're addressing where the customer's at in their buying cycle. I won't go into every phase because there's additional training that goes into much greater detail, but I will go through the first phase to illustrate. Recognize, or F stage. We're early stages in a sales cycle and the customer is aware of the business issue but unclear as to the right solution or fix. This stage is very much about discovery, about research, and about understanding. As you can see from the key activities, there's a lot of background work to do because there's a lot of unknowns. It's not time to present or position, but a time to listen and learn. Let's note the exit milestone. The customer admits their business issue and goal, and they commit to further conversation or evaluation with you and SAP in a specified time frame. Without that minimum level of commitment, we shouldn't be investing more in the deal. What does that proof point look like? As mentioned, the proof points at the end of every phase help us to determine if we've understood the customer correctly and where exactly they are in their buying cycle. Only if we properly understand where the customer stands in the buying cycle will we be able to produce a reliable forecast. Let's take a closer look at how this works. In every phase, the salesperson needs to perform specific actions in order to trigger a specific reaction from the customer. Once the customers confirm that A, we understand their situation correctly, and B, they agree and commit to proceeding with you and SAP via the proof points, we can be sure that the customer really is in the phase that we assumed they were. And by involving the customer in developing the proof points, we make sure they're committed to finding a solution. Lack of that customer involvement or response indicates that they're not really committed or we're not the vendor of choice. Either way, it's our signal to be careful when adding additional resources to the deal. The proof point concept supports two major goals. One, a more reliable and accurate forecast, and two, and more importantly, we have validation that we understand the customer and the customer's business. Again, your action triggers the customer's reaction, which results in a proof point, written proof where the customer confirms at the end of every phase. These proof points also serve as validation points for SAP. If you have a deal in phase C, SAP will confirm that you've received confirmation of a mutual action plan. SAP Sales Management validates the same proof points in internal deal reviews and forecast calls. Here's a description of the proof points at each phase. This may seem arduous and overly formal, especially in the latter stages of a sales cycle. Most sales executives feel a verbal agreement is sufficient for forecasting, but this is critical in continuing to hold our customers accountable. It also helps to identify any red flags or concerns. Customers are not likely to agree in writing without articulating their concerns too. Let's take a look at some of the sample communications. This is a sample confirmation communication. The description of confirmation communication is that the customer confirms their goals, needs, and business issues, and then commits to further conversation or evaluation with the partner within a specified time frame. The customer needs to respond to this communication. That is the proof point. This is intended for that first point of contact after a meaningful discovery call. Individuals probably have been tasked to do the initial research. They may not have influence or authority. In this example, the first point of contact is the director of IT. It's really important after that first call, and it shows great diligence that we respond and summarize and show we heard what they said, and also set the stage for next steps. And here's a sample champion communication. Champion communication is an email in which the champion confirms their goals, needs, and business issues, and then commits to further evaluation with the partner in a specified time frame. The only difference between confirmation communication and champion communication is the audience. A champion is someone who has both influence in order to persuade others to take action and authority to either make the decision or get someone who holds the budget to make that decision. In this example, the champion is the CIO. A mutual action plan confirmation is just an email in which the decision maker agrees to the mutual action plan. That map needs to be developed collaboratively between the partner or SAP and this customer. This is a good example of a map confirmation because it also identifies and calls out the other stakeholders in the buying decision and their specific goals. And here's a sample mutual action plan. This may be the most important agreement between seller and customer because it maps out what it'll take to close the deal. When done effectively, all questions and concerns are addressed. The timelines are laid out so there's no surprises, and there's ownership either from the customer, SAP, or you, the partner. The starting point of a map is actually the end point or final step. A customer with a compelling event will typically have a go-live date in mind, and working backwards from that date shows that we mean to meet their timeline objectives. This is opposed to what often looks like customers meeting our timelines of quarter or year end. Note here that the final action goes beyond signing the contract. What's really important to the customer is actually successful completion, go live, and rollout, not necessarily just the signing of the contract, which is important to us. From there, a lot of time needs to be spent with the decision maker and each stakeholder to understand what specific questions, terms, objectives they personally want to address to give the project a go-ahead. These actions fall under certain categories. There's stakeholder related, technical evaluation, buying process, And finally, value and funding related. There's also key attributes to a very successful and strong mutual action plan. Activities need to be prescriptive and well-defined. There has to be clear deliverables and ownership of each item. The timelines have to be realistic. And all of this has to be agreed upon by the decision maker. Finally, and most importantly, this has to be a living document. This isn't a document that is agreed upon by both parties and then set aside. This is what gets updated and corrected and reviewed on a weekly, if not more frequent basis every time more actions are accomplished. This next section will cover deal qualification. What is deal qualification? SAP's deal qualification process is based on a standard set of 8 qualification criteria. These criteria were created within FSM to help determine if a deal is worth pursuing. Most salespeople agree on the importance of deal qualification, but in reality, we see this aspect of sales execution is typically the most poorly addressed. Deal qualification includes the initial deal qualification, ongoing deal qualification and deal reviews and forecasting, as well as the deal disqualification. The more time spent early on in discovery and qualification, the more likely the deal will close. To qualify the deals in a standardized way, we leverage 8 criteria, which allows to determine an overall deal score. These 8 criteria and score are used in the qualification decision and then throughout the sales cycle. The criteria were designed from hundreds of interviews with sales, and they're used globally in SAP. The 8 criteria you see are organized into 2 groups, the engagement plan and the value story. The engagement plan. This helps us to understand the situation in the account, then manage alignment within the account, and make sure the right support is engaged. This includes the stakeholder strategy, competition, partners and ecosystem, and in this case, it would be SAP and ecosystem alignment, and finally funding. The value story. This helps us assess the end-to-end value story, building the business case and ROI by bringing together customer challenges and value drivers. This includes the compelling event, customer challenges, business drivers, and solution differentiators. Scoring and interpretation. Each criteria can be scored as weak, moderate, or strong depending on the level of risk associated with the criteria or the level of confidence we have in the information. The color coding is somewhat self-explanatory. Red or weak means that we have little or no information and we need to spend a lot more time in this area. Yellow or moderate indicates limited information or that the information hasn't been validated. And green or strong scores show that we have a clear understanding and the information is being validated by the customer. This also shows that risks have been mitigated. Depending on the range of the overall score, a color code is associated to it. For red scores, we recommend requalification or disqualification. For yellow scores, the deal should stay at E or move to D. And for green, it can progress to D or even C. Here's the assessment criteria for each question to help you score your deal and identify areas of risk. Input this information early in the deal to see what we know and what we don't know yet, so we're clear what needs attention. Expect early on not to have a lot of the answers. Know where we need to focus. No deal should move beyond C phase without every criteria being strongly met. The results should be shared with SAP sales teams so you can collaborate on ways to address the risk. Note again that the SAP sales teams go through the same deal scoring criteria as part of deal qualification and forecast reviews. We've touched on some topics at a very high level today, and each of these subjects warrants a much deeper dive. There's a great amount of resources and training available, and I highly encourage you to follow these links to review the content in full. There's in-depth training and additional documentation to support you with adopting FSM and deal qualification. Along with this recording, we will provide a more comprehensive deck that includes reference slides that you should keep handy and review often. To summarize what we've covered today, we've looked at FSM and why it's important, FSM phases and proof points, we've reviewed the deal qualification criteria, and we've pointed you to some additional resources and training on FSM. Thank you for your time. I hope the session was useful, and I hope it'll be the basis of greater alignment in forecasting as well as an improved win rate for you and SAP.